want to ask a very, very simple question. Has Disney given up on the Marvels? They did a premiere event last night, which was, by the way, it was last night they did the premiere event, Tuesday. It was at this dome in Vegas. It was a fan screening. Kevin Feige did attend, and I've got there's a couple of interesting interviews I'll share with you. But not only did they do this fan event, so no fancy premiere, they also did the junket this past weekend, and I know some colleagues who cover the space who were at the junket who said that they did not get to see the actual movie. They only saw 20 minutes of the movie. I'm not going to call them out by name, but they did not actually see the film that they were doing interviews for or covering. They only saw 20 minutes of the movie. Before we get to our actual reaction, Alan and I will jump into it. I just want to ask the question, is Disney pulling back on all the marketing and the spend? And the other thing that would indicate this to me, sort of the weird way that they're promoting this. I got this last night. I'm going to put myself full screen for a second. And to remind you, I was Alan's +1. Here's the review embargo, which was 9 a.m. this morning. It's a little slip of paper to remind you, hey, don't say anything until that time, which is today, the day before it technically screens. What are your thoughts? Just we're talking purely from a business standpoint, Alan, and I'm going to show you some clips that I collected from Twitter. We're going to look at that, but they've really pulled back. Normally, the budgets for these things are huge, right? They're huge.
What are your thoughts? They're the same price of the movie, basically.
Right. Yeah. Usually, if you spend $100 million on the movie, you're going to have to spend $100 million on marketing the movie to have any chance of you making your money back. But has Disney just given up and just said, look, we're just going to take the L and move on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I told you this last night, but they basically strange world the Marvels. I think it was the smartest move, and I mentioned it several times here. Just stop spending money on advertising because you're just not going to make it back. You're going to make more money just putting it in theaters, and just whoever straggles in, they can go and watch the movie, and you make your money off that. Because there is no reason to put a huge budget. That's why I thought the cat stream was brilliant, because they put very little money into it, and I think that cat stream did more to promote this movie than anything else, and so the ROI is quite high on that one versus other things. Versus the what is it, the escalator decals at the theater that we were at.
Yeah, that's pretty just, that's par for the course, is posters and whatnot, but it really feels like there's not a lot of momentum behind this. And
there's good reason why.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bad movie.
Well, do you think, here's the thing, we've seen it and we're going to get into it when we get to our reaction and official review, but I wanted to talk about the business side of this.
Mm-hmm.
And are we going to see lower budget Marvel movies? The reported budget of this is near $300 million. Not on the screen, if you ask me.
Right.
Especially when you look at recent films like The Creator. That The Creator looked way better than this. At least had a vision for what the look was, what the rules were, and the world. Look, that film was flawed on the script, but at least on the world building side, I think it did a decent job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're saying it's $300 million to make this movie, we're talking $3 million a minute.
Right.
I mean, that's, I think the one thing that the producers relish with the strike is the fact that they can just cancel everything and start over.
Right.
To reset and say, hey, we can't make $200 million movies that aren't going to make $200 million, $400 million. I think Avatar was your only exception to this idea that you can outspend, you can spend as much as you did, and with the possibility of getting it back. They've got to scale things back. It's got to get to the $100 million range for a Marvel movie, and I think the strike is an excuse for them to finally turn back time and do that.
Well, let's take a look. Last night I was scrolling through Twitter, and I'm going to share screen here really quick.
Of all the people who are at our screening,
Yes, all the people that were at our screening. Well, it was weird because I did mention that there was someone that, as we're walking out, says that was terrible. I think that might be worse than Eternals. And then I saw later that that person had, posted something that I thought was kind of positive. So a little surprised. This is Kevin Feige at the event last night. I know we played a clip on the Nooner. I'm going to play this clip. I'm going to play
what a great expression there.
It's about 4 minutes. This is Kevin Feige at the fan event, which looked like you'll see footage from it if you scroll into it. It looked really fun. It looked really fun. There were fans in cosplay. There was a giant cat projected on a dome. It looked like they had it looked like everybody there had a lot of fun. But let's see what Kevin has to say. And you're seeing this for the first time, so check this out.
How you doing? This is pretty cool.
Good, it's super cool. Yes.
A flirkin on the sphere.
A giant flicking flirkin. That's very awesome.
A giant freaking flirkin. Okay, let's do a quick state of the union of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because there's a lot of energy surrounding Marvel. There's a lot of headlines, things going on, things that might be true, things that may not be true. What can you say? Trying to get you to summarize this on a soundbite about the direction of the MCU and kind of your vision going forward. Is there anything you want to clarify?
The Marvels comes out on Friday.
Great.
Finale of Loki on Thursday. Those are two giant things.
Those are two giant things.
Those are two giant things, and I like to look far, far ahead, which we can't talk about, and what's immediate. And
he is literally there to just sell. The movie comes out on Friday. He just says there's a lot of momentum surrounding Marvel. No mention of the article in Variety that came out last week. By the way, I have a hard copy. Of this that was delivered.
By the way, who did the cover of that?
What's that?
Do you know who did the cover?
The artwork in the article is really cool. I don't know. Gary Beekler requested that I hand this to him. I'll give it to him for a good price. A good price. Gary, I'll hold it for you. But he's just there. Who else is going to sell this movie? They don't have the talent. Who's going to sell it? The director, right? But let's continue looking at this. This is kind of a long clip, but I think it's worth going through.
You know those two projects that are being unveiled to the fans within 2 days represents about 5 years of work of about thousands and thousands of people. So to me, that.
I'm sorry, I muted you.
I'm listening to it in my headphones. 5 years of work. 5 years of planning to get to this. All right, let's continue.
My favorite thing you always say, you're like, some people like to talk to me, not so much.
That's true too.
The final trailer came out for the Marvels, and it kind of threw the gauntlet. We see Tessa Thompson. We see another character kind of walk by, and everyone's going,
Who is it?
Who is it?
Who is it? What's the tough theory?
Okay, my safety school is that I think it might be Maria, but my Yale or Harvard is that it's Storm.
I've never heard that. Safety school or Yale or Harvard? That's interesting.
Yeah, like, you know when you're applying for colleges and you're like, I think it's probably this, but if it's this, I'm gonna.
I don't want to say. All right, let's just go through it. Let's just go through it. We'll get to your comments too in the chat. Believe me.
I lose my mind, but I don't want to. It's.
I did not apply to Yale or Harvard.
I did not either. You heard it here first. But given that, what can you say about the Marvel's impact on the future of the MCU, the next phase?
I mean, everything is a building block in the broader story. That's just part of the fun. But really, it's the fun of the movie. The movie has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Mm-hmm. And what Mia has worked on for so long, for so hard with Brie and with Tiana and with Ahmad.
Oops. Hold on. You're muted. Hey, I have to mute you when you're
going to do that. You got to unmute me. Okay. Breaking news.
Or you're going to mute yourself. Either way.
I'm trying to control this. You can control. You got the mute. I got the breaking news. The movie has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The Marvels.
Especially represents, as I said, represents years of very hard work. And it's this experience and the fun of this movie that is what I want people focused on.
I remember being in Hall H a couple years ago, not the one I hosted, it was the year before that,
Yes.
where you said all of these things, you had all these announcements, and then you're like, and we can't even talk about mutants yet, but we will eventually. And now we're at a point where Kamala, we know, is one of the first times we hear the word mutant in the MCU. So I know you don't show your cards, but I know how much you love the freaking X-Men. Is there anything you can say about how delicate that is to you and kind of what the plan is? When are we going to hear something?
I don't know if it's delicate. It's super exciting, but the X-Men are as solid and rich and great a concept and characters as exist. The return of the animated series next year, which we're very excited about.
Yes.
And I saw some new final episodes today, which really bring you back to that core of who the X-Men are and that soap opera that those characters represent. And then in live action, people will see, perhaps soon.
Yeah, we've had a lot of new characters enter the fold since Endgame. We could sit here for hours and talk about every single one, but
Okay, so Alan, any thoughts on what we've heard, which isn't much right now?
Well, I mean, I appreciate the fact that someone is asking him these questions, and and just going out there. She's being very kind to him. And I'll say this: after watching 3 years of White House press conferences, it's quite refreshing to hear at least, he's not outright lying to us. He's just beating around a bush, a very large bush, and beating it to death. But it's what I'm hearing right now is there's no vision of Marvel beyond this movie.
I think the vision. I think they're leading to something that maybe the public and normies have kind of checked out of. Let's finish this off. There's a little over a minute left. Let's check it out.
You know what?
Let's
Thank
do
you
it.
for giving me that exclusive.
Yes.
Oh my God, Kevin! I knew I was your favorite. I'm just gonna pick one out of a hat though.
Okay.
Harry Styles. We saw him in the Eternals. It's been 2 years. Have you guys had any more talks? Are we gonna see him pop up again soon?
He's excited. We're excited. We will see. You introduce a lot of new characters in a lot of movies and a lot of tags.
Yes.
Yes. Where do the tag folk reappear?
Where
Good question.
Yes, and then there's this Taylor Swift, this Dazzler rumor going around. There's just so much.
A lot of musicians.
Hey, pause for 1 second.
Musicians. It's we need. Well, I was gonna say we
Pause
need
for
a
1 second.
but we actually got one.
What's it? Okay.
Okay, so just right there, Kevin Feige needs to be on Dancing with the Stars.
That's where all of this is leading. He's just finally just going to be on Dancing with the Stars because where else is there to go?
I know, because Harry Styles. I mean, he is dancing around that issue so much, and it's like, oh yeah, there's talks. We have talks. We're all excited, but nothing. And exactly that there's nothing happening.
I feel like someone needs to make a list. We could just make a list off the top of our heads of the different roads they went down that are like, what's going to happen with that? Like, do you remember the end of Shang-Chi?
Yeah.
Where they have a meeting, Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers meet up with Shang-Chi and Katie.
Yeah.
Why?
They interrupt their dim sum.
They interrupt their dim sum for a meeting about the bracelets.
Yeah. Well, what about the big finale of Eternals where there's a giant celestial head sticking up out of the Arctic?
I feel like even the people making Marvel stuff don't understand how many loose ends are just sitting out there for no reason. Let's finish up the rest of this interview and then we'll go to your comments here. All right.
Rogers the musical.
We got Rogers the musical, so never mind. Okay, one specific thing I want to ask you that was in the headlines is this idea that some fallen Avengers could make their return. Anything you can say about that? I know this answer.
No. Is that the answer?
Yeah.
Fallen Avengers returning. Is that a new? I've not even seen that. Is that a new rumor?
Yeah, it was like one of the things that were talked about at this retreat where Scarlett Johansson and Robert Downey Jr. possibly returning at some point.
We did not discuss that at the retreat. He's the truth.
Okay.
We're doing a project with Scarlett. I love Robert. He's a part of the family. But in terms of returning, we'll have to see.
Okay, my final question for you. What's up with the Star Wars movie? Is it happening? I know that's like, is it happening?
Any Star Wars movie?
Yours.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Good to see you.
He's kind of a terrible poker player.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, how much effort does he want to look into being, to being able to say the things he has to say without, because everyone knows what's going on. And the other thing is, if I didn't know better, and maybe I do, this sounds like a guy who may not have a job in a while.
You think it's that bad?
Well, I mean, again, there's, from everything he said, there's nothing that he's saying that's beyond Loki, the season finale, and this movie. He's not committed to anything. There's nothing he's committed to. The X-Men animated series, that's the other thing. But right now, if you were to ask anyone at Marvel what is next, there's nothing. No one can say anything. And and that usually means that maybe someone's not in talks about the future anymore. And when
Mhm.
someone's not in talks about the future, especially with your leader, that usually means your leader's about to go. Again, speculation. I'm just observing what I'm seeing. And I've seen this happen with people where, you ask them what's happening and they tell you nothing. And then 3 days later, they're fired.
Well, I'll say this, that when you work for a big corporation like this and you're planning schedules, you're 5 years in the future.
Mhm.
You are 5 years in the future. So you're basically planning tomorrow's either mistakes or hits. So they committed to this, as he pointed out. This represents Loki season 2, and the Marvels represents 5 years of work. He said this during this interview we just watched. So they're keeping that in mind. That means right now they're 5 years into their future of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So she did ask. I mean, again, I appreciate this reporter from Entertainment Tonight, because she's asking some really good questions that we know he can't answer. But when asked about the future beyond this, notice what didn't come out of his mouth. Echo didn't come out of his mouth, and Daredevil didn't come out of his mouth.
that is really telling, especially with all the problems with Daredevil and then basically going back to square one. I feel like, I don't know if Kevin Feige is on the chopping block in terms of his job, but I do know that Marvel as a brand, that's on the chopping block.
Mhm.
And I think there's going to be some major pivots. We've already seen inklings of that. Echo dropping on day one. We watched the trailer for Echo last week, and it was surprisingly better than expected. At least it looked, but I mean, it's easy to make a trailer look good if you're just showing pieces of it, which could just be all from one episode. Who knows?
Yeah.
But all of that drops in a day. And then Daredevil's kind of on hold, in a holding pattern. And I also think no one brought up the name Jonathan Majors.
Mhm.
She could have asked about Jonathan Majors and Daredevil. Jonathan Majors faces a year in prison for charges not just from incident in New York City, but incidents in the UK. So there is, and look, innocent until proven guilty. Where there's smoke, there may be fire. And right now, it's hard to take a look at what the predictions for the Marvel's box office is going to be and not be concerned, because it used to be that Marvel could throw anything at the wall, and it's like, can you believe this thing we tried as a goof became hugely popular? And now it seems to be the opposite of that, that almost everything isn't working or not resonating in the way that it used to. Final thoughts, Alan, before we go.
Let me throw one other observation. Again, I know nothing. No one's told me anything. I'm just speculating. So I'm doing the dirt sheet thing here. I'm speculating. But another indication that I'm seeing is it feels like there's going to be a major shakeup in Disney leadership at the board level, and we've heard the stories about Nelson Peltz and Ike Perlmutter. And usually what happens when there's a big shakeup, like a company's about to be bought or companies in being prepped to be sold, is you shut everything down. And it sounds like Marvel may be in that position right now, where because he's not promoting anything, that that maybe the spigot of money has been shut off at this moment until this leadership issue is settled one way or the other. And again, speculation. I don't know anything, but this is what I'm seeing and what I'm observing.
Corporations are human, according to the Supreme Court. Corporations are people, which means they are capable of making mistakes. Let's talk about some big mistakes in corporate history. You pointed out, Sean Hu, New Coke. After New Coke launched, they realized they made a mistake. They got rid of it and brought back the old formula. Now, there's a lot of theories that that may have actually been kind of a, like their plan all along. A reset
of the original.
Right. So whatever, but corporations have made mistakes. Alan, you know more about this topic than I do, but I'll bring it up and I want to hear your thoughts. Do you remember when California Adventure first launched at Disneyland?
I was there opening day.
It was a colossal failure. It was awful. They had one thing I never saw, which was like a Tron parade or something. Anyways, it was like the reviews. I remember the reviews. This is in the 90s. And it was bad. California Adventure was just like got horrible reviews in the press when the press, I believe, was honest and gave it poor reviews. And you know what happened? Disney took the note. They went back, they retooled, they added new rides and attractions, and California Adventure, which serves alcohol. They don't serve alcohol at Disneyland, but they do serve it at California Adventure. I haven't been since 2019. Okay. Last time I went to Galaxy's Edge, but they made a mistake and they made changes for the better. And now, at least based, the reviews for California Adventure are generally good. They fixed problems. So it's not what's new is corporations making mistakes. And rather than saying this pivot hasn't worked, or just making changes behind the scenes, they're basically just blaming the audience. And just watch. You can set your watch by it. The reason the Marvels didn't perform is because the audience hates women. That is objectively not true. Alan, but what are your thoughts on corporations making mistakes?
Yeah. Again, you mentioned they're human beings. They make mistakes. The key, though, what happened with Coke here was the corporation was willing to fess up to that mistake.
Yes.
Understand that a mistake was made, pinpoint what the mistake was, and then reverse that mistake. That's not the feeling you get from Disney today. That the fact that they are more concerned about blaming us than they are about finding the actual problem. Of course people want diversity. Of course people want intersectionalism. Of course people want all that stuff. And so they lean into it. They're feeling like, maybe we didn't go far enough. And so we're going to lean into it more. When what they should be doing is talking to us and ask us a simple question of, why didn't you watch my movie? And then listen to our answers and then do the opposite. You bring up California Adventure. I was there opening day. And not only that, I showed up after work at 6:00 and I rode every single ride at California Adventure on opening day by 10:00 that night. I mean, that's how successful this was. I was one of the few suckers who bought the separate annual pass, so I could go to California Adventure for a full year, and I owned that park. Me and my wife, we ruled California Adventure for an entire year, and they realized their mistake, that was a mistake, and they incorporated California Adventure back into the main pass.
Well, I look, corporations at the end of the day, you can talk color and diversity all you want. The one color that corporations love is green, which is money. And you've seen in the past, and actually, I remember when the new Coke launched, they fairly quickly pivoted and they did this big launch, new Coke. It got a lot of bad press, and just in general, consumers didn't like new Coke. Basically, new Coke was Pepsi, is what it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was response to Pepsi creaming them with the taste test.
Right.
And Coke thought that Pepsi was winning at that point, and they decided they need to replicate Pepsi rather than figure out why people loved the taste of Coca-Cola, even though it didn't have the sweetness that Pepsi had.
I actually prefer Coke over Pepsi. Just my personal, it's my personal thing.
Pepsi's too sweet.
Boom,